Welcome to Central Valley Voices, a show for highlighting local nonprofits making a difference in the California Central Valley. My name is Johnny Pacina, and I'll be your host for today. In this edition of Central Valley Voices, we'll be talking to Yvonne Schwemmer and Linda Knight from Fresno Filmworks, and Matthew Buckman from Fresno Grand Opera. First up is Yvonne and Linda from Fresno Filmworks. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Johnny.
Like I was mentioning earlier, it's kind of tough to get our schedules in tune here, and I'm glad we're able to highlight local nonprofits, great ones such as the Fresno Filmworks. And me being a local here, I've heard of it, I know kind of have some idea, but let's let the viewers know, what exactly is Fresno Filmworks? Who would like to answer that? Linda, would you like to?
You got the most tenure. You want to go ahead and answer?
We're a local nonprofit, of course, that's why we're here. We were formed in 2002, and we show independent, first-run films at the historic Tower Theater. Our mission is actually threefold. First, to promote film as a cultural art form. If you've been to any of the really good, the great films, and the recent ones that we've shown are Thebe, Kumiko, Treasure Hunter, and Mountains May Depart. And if you watch those movies, it's a mesmerizing experience because they really are created in a similar manner to the way that a great artist would create a fine portrait or any kind of painting. And then secondly, the second part of our mission is to foster a greater understanding of world cultures by showing films from around the world, from some countries that you hardly even ever hear about. We had one from Romania, which dealt quite a bit with the history of Romania, the recent history of Romania, and the communist movement there, and Thebe was another one that took place in the desert with a brother and his younger brother just being hired to travel through the desert and show this band of people where they wanted to go. And then the third part of our mission is really to provide a much more entertaining and enjoyable movie experience than you can get in a multiplex. This is the Tower Theater. It's a warm, inviting
it's fantastic. It's historical.
Place. Yeah, it's great. And so you go in there and you see people you know and just hang out and chat.
Totally.
And then see a great film.
If I could add on to that, because I'm relatively new to Fresno Filmworks, Brian Harley from here asked me to join the board, or invited me to come look at the board, and they look at me. But that whole community experience is just such a tremendous value, I think, to the whole experience. That you start getting to know regulars there, and great concession kind of environment, affordable, goodies to eat, and it's just a great experience. It's much different than going to a Cineplex.
Right, and we sell alcohol
okay.
as well.
Maybe some other draws for people to go. But it's interesting that it's a great thing I think you're doing, because for me, being a film fan and going online and looking at all these great films, I'm always wondering, they'll say like special screenings, and I'm like, oh geez, I got to go to LA, or I got to go to these other big cities to see it. But no, like Fresno Filmworks brings those films here.
Right.
And it gives us the opportunity to watch those films as well.
And it's not just the films that get shown, because we go through a whole nomination process by members of the board. So it's a fairly studious effort. Wow. And then, so there's those that don't make it, that we call it the cutting room floor. It's one of our posts on our blog. And so you can find out, okay, what were the other films of interest, and you seek those out on, for Amazon or whatever. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So aside from the movie going and inviting the community to come and watch these films, what other types of events does Fresno Filmworks put on, if any?
Well, they're all in the context of the film, to my knowledge. But there's one event that's an annual event, and that is the Oscar nominated shorts.
Okay.
For live action and film, animation and documentary. And that's a great event. And I think that's really looked forward to by the community.
Yeah, it's one of my
Yeah.
favorite events. It's the short films to me are completely fascinating. How do you pack a story into 8, 12, 15 minutes and do it well? And somehow all the surplusage is left out. And what you're left with is the meat of the matter.
It's really a challenge to
Yeah.
fit all of that into that time span,
Right.
to get a message across.
Core storytelling. It's something our members at CMAC would, I think, really find a value.
I think so too, definitely. And you know, they always say, you know, music is the universal language, right? But when you see these films from all over the world too, and like you're saying, Linda, there's an art form to it. And when you can really present your message through film, I almost feel like that's almost kind of a universal language in its own too, because you know, the message is in film. It's such a great outlet to present your message, whether it's visually with the stories and the different types of things you can highlight. So I think when people start realizing that, they appreciate it more as an art form, and I think that's a great opportunity to be a part of Fresno Filmworks to do that.
I think proof of your point, Johnny, or a proof of your point is I'm often asked about the subtitles. And isn't it distracting and it's hard to read the subtitles? And I find with a good film, I forget the subtitles are even there. And so that message and the storytelling with the audio and the video transcends, you know, the need for the words, and you just get kind of swept away with all that.
It's true. The message can be put across even with the visuals
Yep.
too. And yeah, even for me though, I love watching just films, even in English, that I understand with subtitles, just because I feel like I retain all the information, right? And I think it's all important. So with that in mind too, what are perhaps maybe some challenges that you face? So, you know, people may be aware that are part of nonprofits or that want to start their own nonprofit or be a part of CMAC even, just so they can be aware. What kind of challenges do you face as in Fresno Filmworks?
Well, one of the challenges that we've been facing for the past probably 4 or 5 years, you know, they're not making 35 millimeter films anymore, and the industry has been switching from film to what's called digital cinema package. And my understanding of the technical aspect of that is almost nil. Yeah. But what I do know about it is that the larger independent film distributors are going to this DCP, and it requires a special computer, because they ship the film not on a reel and not on a disc, but on a hard drive. And it also requires a different screen with higher resolution. And as far as we're concerned, that means an investment of $40,000 to $80,000 in equipment if we are going to have as large a selection as we would like to have. So we're limited to some of the smaller distributors who are still putting out their movies on Blu-ray.
Wow.
I think there's another challenge, and that is, for us specifically, and that is the release of films, because oftentimes now, coincident with the release of a film, shortly thereafter it's available on, you know, it's streaming. And so we're trying to bring things to our public or community that they're not ordinarily going to have. So timing it with the restrictions that Linda spoke of, timing it with, you know, when is it going to be released in a broader sense, it makes the window get tighter and tighter. So there's a lot of work gets done to find the right films.
Going back a little bit to what you're talking about, the cutting room floor, kind of the selection process of the films, are there any other factors that sway you into picking a film? For example, maybe do you feel like, you know, this is more applicable to this time now that this is this time of the year, for example, or this topic is big right now, or does it kind of just a variety? How does that process go?
Well, the shorts get done at the same time every year, because that's just prior to the Oscars.
Right.
So that's sort of easy. I think I sense, and as a newcomer, that it's about getting a balance of, you know, some indie films can tend to be a little on the dark side, and, you know, and not getting going too much down that path, and just providing a balance of geographics, of topics, of you know, film styles.
Gotcha. And do you look at perhaps maybe the the quality of the film too? Is that another factor, or is it just how is the batch selected, I guess?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's difficult to determine from the previews, the trailers, which tend to show the best part of the film.
That was it.
Is this really going to
Same
be a
with
great
major
film?
films, too, yeah.
So what we try to do is go to the online reviews, the ratings that Metacritic and IMDb have audience ratings and critic ratings.
I see.
Assign a value to those. So we try to go by that. For our annual film festival, however, we actually watch all of the films before we show them, so that we're able to. They're films that have not been released for public distribution. They're on the film festival circuit.
Gotcha.
So the timing is different. There's not just a 3 or 4 month window during the time while they're first run that we have to show them. So we have time to start early, probably in August, for our November Film Festival, to begin watching films.
Wow.
And getting together as a committee to evaluate the films and talk about which ones we think are going to be the best for
great.
the Fresno audience. Last year, for example, we showed an Armenian film. And that was wildly popular because of the great large Armenian population here.
Definitely.
There's another element that considers the community and timing, and that is that there are board members that make a concerted effort to reach out to the community for sponsorships, for participation by different student groups.
I see.
So, there might be an ethnic group of students that would be more interested in a particular movie, so timing it with their school seasons and the activities they have gone. So a lot of not manipulation, just sensitivity to those issues goes on.
We're just about out of time, but just real quick, I'm curious too, do you have firsthand experience in seeing people coming out of the movie and just, did the discussion start happening? Do you see people really start talking about the topic? That's great.
And we also, from time to time, when we can get the director there or somebody else, we'll have a discussion after the screening, so that audience members are able to ask questions.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, that really enhances the experience too.
All the more reason to get involved, and thank you again, you two, for being here tonight.
Thank
you
Appreciate
so
the time on your
much.
schedule. We're just about out of time with this interview, but we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have Matthew Buckman from Fresno Grand Opera. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Central Valley Voices, a show for highlighting local nonprofits. Joining us now is Matthew Buckman from Fresno Grand Opera. Thank you for being here today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really, this is the first episode of us doing this sort of thing. So we're really excited to be able to highlight local nonprofits and find out their missions. I was fascinated to see the list of nonprofits here in the area too. It's really quite amazing. And I'm glad that you're here so we can talk about the Fresno Grand Opera. So what exactly does the organization do?
Well, obviously, as an opera company, our primary mission is to promote the art form and make the art form available to our community. And so that manifests itself in a couple of different ways. We, of course, have our main stage productions that are performed at the Soroyan Theater and a few other places around town. We have a lot of different kind of variety programs as well. I'm a big proponent in trying to develop a different audience for the art form, because it's the art form itself has stagnated quite a bit over the last 30 to 40 years and definitely needs to evolve a little bit. And so I've introduced to Fresno Grand Opera in my year and a half with the company a lot of different kinds of activities and events that seek out different kinds of audiences for opera and make the art form a little bit more accessible. So we've done everything from cabaret performances and very basic recitals to a show at the Tower Theater that combined classic rock and opera together, which was
neat.
a heck of a lot of fun.
Oh yeah,
so,
I'm sure you're tapping into sort of different audiences when you do that.
Absolutely,
right? That sort of
yeah.
fusion of styles.
Yeah,
So-
we that one was a lot of fun actually. We hired professional composers to rearrange or reorchestrate or in some cases rewrite what we thought were the best 8 classic rock tunes and the best 8 opera arias, and then presented them together in sort of the same musical style. It was a heck of a lot of fun.
That's
so.
great, yeah. And you know, I almost feel like too, when you think of like major cities and you think of the arts, and I think, you know, you think of ballet, you think of, you know, various artists in the town, and I always think of opera too.
Yeah.
It's an important, integral part of the community. So that's a fantastic. That
Yeah,
you're-
I think a lot of a lot of communities sort of pride themselves on, do we have an orchestra? Do we have an opera company? The thing that I'm proud of here in the Central Valley is Fresno Grand Opera operates with a sister company in Modesto, and so I'm the general director of both companies, and we run them side by side, and everything that happens in Fresno also happens in Modesto. But we're the only opera company in the Central Valley. Sacramento lost their opera company a number of times over the last few years, and they're trying to get a way back. Stockton had one for a while, but it's sort of struggling to keep going. And the farther south you go, there's nothing. So really, between San Francisco, San Jose, that sort of Bay Area, and then down to LA, we're the only community that has an opera company.
Well, it's great that you're still here, because I think, again, it's a very important thing for the community to be exposed to that art.
Absolutely.
It has so many things tied to it that really help out communities, especially youth as well. Do you happen to work with youth in some
We
ways?
do, yeah. It's a big part of what we want to do is make the art form more accessible to them. And for years now, the sort of standard approach has been to just have a shorter version of an opera, and you bus a whole bunch of kids in and you let them see it.
Right.
And what we've learned studying data now over about 40 years is that actually has zero impact whatsoever. We're a participatory culture. We want to participate. And so all the programs that we develop are all about letting kids get their hands on the art form and do it somehow. It means you can serve fewer kids because you want them to have a much more deep and meaningful impact with the art form. But I think it means a lot more to them because they get to actually grab a hold of it and participate in it somehow. So that's a big focus of ours, is making sure that kids can participate in it.
That's great. And what ways do you tie in with the kids? Do you go to schools, for example, or do you invite them to events?
We don't go to schools. There's Sierra Chamber Opera here in Fresno as well. It's a small company that their exclusive function is to travel around to different schools and perform for them, and so they do a really good job of that. And so we don't duplicate that service. And so instead, what we seek to do is bring kids into a production that we're doing and let them do it along with us in a small capacity. And so the real common method that we use is when we bring a show to the Soroyan Theater. You know, we've got our entire artistic and technical staff there doing it. And so we bring kids who are interested in that kind of thing in and let them work alongside those technical staff and those artistic staff. So they learn from professionals how to do it while doing it a little bit themselves. And so they get to take a tour backstage. They get dedicated time based on their interest, talking with the costume artist or the makeup artist or the stage director or the person who built the sets or the lighting designer, or literally whatever different capacity a person fills in the art form. we let the kids engage with them so that they get to focus on what it is that they're interested in.
That's great. You give them so many options, but it still ties into the bigger picture.
Exactly.
And yeah, and it goes back to, as you're saying, it's a hands-on kind of thing.
Absolutely.
You feel involved. And I think anytime a nonprofit can have those opportunities that allow people to be involved, individuals, kids, youth, it's a really great thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because you feel like you're part of this community engagement thing.
Well, and community engagement is a big part of what we want to do moving forward. Again, I'm a 35-year-old person, and when people in my peer group find out what I do for a living, they look at me like I have a third eye that just popped up in the middle of my forehead. Because our art form is really, really disconnected from our culture in a lot of ways. It started with how the art form came here back in the late 1800s. The robber barons of the time wanted culture in this country and it didn't really exist, so they went to Europe and they brought it over here. And an art form that had always evolved for hundreds of years was sort of frozen in time and said, this is what opera is, and it's never changed in 100 years now. And so we have a lot of catching up to do to make it a little bit more relevant. For us, what that means is over the next couple of years, all of our programming is telling stories about the Central Valley. And so there are, oddly enough, some pretty major composers have written pretty major works based on themes about the Central Valley. And so next year, the story of Mice and Men, which John Steinbeck wrote about migrant workers in the Valley. Fantastic novel, obviously, but a composer wrote a great opera based on Of Mice and Men. The Grapes of Wrath, another Steinbeck novel, a great opera written on that. And so we're going to do these works and also have events in the community based around them. So it's not just a performance of an opera, but sort of a day-long celebration. For example, we're doing the opera Our Town based on the Thornton Wilder play next year. And instead of just presenting the opera, instead what we'll do is have a day-long exhibit celebrating the history of Fresno as our town. And do photograph exhibits so that you can see what the community has looked like as we've grown up throughout the years. Having different community and business leaders come in and tell their story about living in our town. And so really take that art piece and make it the focal point for a broader civic engagement in our community so that our community can come together around a theme and sort of tell the story of our community.
That's great, because you take the art form, you adapt it to your surroundings, where you're at, you're giving, there's history too. People are learning, and they're learning about their past. And as you're saying too, same with art, sometimes history is lost, especially in this area. There's only a few things you can really point to. Arts are, there, like you said, there are some people that are centered their artwork around the Valley in Fresno, but the fact that you're taking this new approach to it, I think is really great. And it would really encourage a lot of people to join too, I think.
Well, I think the thing is art has been around as long as we've been around. Right. I mean, art has always been a reflection of the human experience, back to when the cave dwellers painted on walls, or on their cave walls. Art has always existed to reflect the human experience and to tell our story. And the so-called classical art forms, symphony orchestras, opera companies, ballet companies, really have become legacy art forms. They tell the stories of a period of time that isn't now. And I think that's why they struggle as much as they do. And so for me, for art to be meaningful to a community, it needs to reflect the human experience that we're experiencing right now. And so when I look at, I was born and raised in Fresno and went away and I've come back. And when I think about the community of Fresno, and the same goes in Modesto, it's a very agricultural community. It's that whether we like it or not, that is still in our roots and will be for a long time, because that's how we serve the world, is through what we're able to produce in our region. And so for me, doing Of Mice and Men and highlighting the role that migrant workers have played in the growth of our region is a really important thing to do, because I think we like to think about migrant workers in a certain way, and I don't think we should. And so there's a great piece of art that celebrates them. And with the opera The Grapes of Wrath, which I'm excited, it's the West Coast premiere of that piece. It's only been done a handful of times, and it's a brilliant piece.
Wow.
It allows us to celebrate and tell the story of how Fresno grew, because we were a very small community until the Dust Bowl, and we had this mass migration, and workers from the Midwest came here, and we grew into this place that we know now through that period of time. And to be able to tell that story, I think is really, really important.
Yeah, I think people will really be receptive to that too, and those who are related to those people who came over from the past too.
Exactly.
And that's So, and looking back too, because I think it's a great thing that your future events planned and what you're going to be doing. What other types of events have happened already that you've done?
Yeah, that's a great. We just closed out our 2015-16 season just a couple of weeks ago with a piece of art that I'm actually really proud to have brought. It was controversial to have done it, I think, because people sort of made up their mind about it once they heard about it. But we did the opera Dead Man Walking. I don't know if you're familiar with the book or the movie. A woman named Sister Helen Prejean, who was a Catholic nun back in the 70s and 80s, started exchanging letters with somebody on death row in Louisiana, and was asked to provide him spiritual guidance on the path towards his execution. And it really, it changed her view of sort of the criminal world and the penitentiary system in this country. And she has grown to become a very active death penalty reform advocate. But at the time that she experienced this, she was very naive, she was young, and really didn't know what she was getting herself into. And she wrote a book about her experience doing this. And it was an instant New York Times bestseller. It was a fantastic book. And a year later, Susan Sarandon and Sean Penn made the major motion picture, Dead Man Walking. It was directed by Tim Robbins, and Susan Sarandon played Sister Helen, and Sean Penn played the convicted murderer. And instantaneously, it's a brilliant movie. It's a fantastic movie, but it sort of shines the light on this topic. And the opera was written in the year 2000. It premiered at San Francisco Opera, and it's just a brilliant piece of art in that it tells both sides of a very difficult story. And I was very proud to have done that in this community.
Well, that's great. Yeah, like I was mentioning in the last interview with the other guests too, we're bringing stuff to the Central Valley that some people may not have access to.
Exactly right.
You're bringing that art form here, those types of, those operas, and it's a great thing you're doing. So it looks like we're just at about a time, Matthew, but thank you for being here and taking the time out of your day.
Thank you for the invitation.
Definitely. All right, so that wraps it up for today's Central Valley Voices. If you'd like to learn more about any of the organizations we talked to today, you can look for them on CMAC's website at cmac.tv. Thanks again to our guests Matthew Buckman, Linda Knight, and Yvonne Schwemmer, and thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.